Source: Jitsu wa Watashi. Welcome back to AniRecapz. Like and subscribe so you never miss our quality uploads. The story begins in the evening with our MC Asahi Kuramane running through his high school in order to meet with Yuko Shirigami, whom MC knows is always alone in their classroom at this time of day. Asahi plans on giving Yuko a love letter. He takes a moment to catch his breath and opens up the door. There, for a brief moment of silence, they both simultaneously screamed in utter shock. Before we can find out what happened next, we jump back to several days earlier with MC playing the old maid with his friends Oak, Shima, and Sakura. Asahi is confident in his victory thanks to his glasses, which he believes will be able to block his friend's telepathic abilities. However, we learn that Asahi has the worst poker face of all time, and his friends are able to avoid selecting the old maid based on Asahi's expressions. We then get a recount of our MC's inability to keep secrets or tell lies. Even if he wanted to lie, his facial expressions would always reveal the truth. This has earned MC the title of the Holy Basket. Although our MC feels this is a curse, his friends tell him that because of this, they can always trust in what he tells them. Learning this brings a tear to MC's eyes. Sometime later, while class is in session, the teacher calls on Yuko to translate a passage from the textbook. While staring at her, Asahi started remembering how he fell in love with Yuko because he finds her to be mysterious. We learn that Yuko is always the first student to arrive at school each day, is the last to leave, and always spends her free time alone. MC sees the two of them as total opposites. He is unable to keep secrets, and Yuko, who's full of them. Asahi causes several disruptions and is getting scolded by the teacher. When the class representative intervenes, she's able to defuse the situation before the teacher can murder Asahi. Next, we skip to gym class, where Asahi focuses on Yuko, whom he notes is always sitting on the sidelines in the shade. He knows that her reasons for not participating can't be to her fair skin complexion, as he recalls her as having had a tan in the past. MC is suddenly brought back to reality with a football to the face. At the end of the school day, Asahi regroups with his friends, and Oak asks when Asahi is going to confess to Yuko. MC is taken aback by this, as he believed that his feelings for Yuko were the one secret he was able to keep from his friends, which he hadn't discussed with them for the entire time he's had these feelings, which started in the fall of the previous year. Oak reminds our MC that he's called the Holy Basket for a reason. We are given a quick flashback to last summer, where we see Asahi trying to confess to the class representative, herself being known as the Iron Lady. We learn her name later. The class rep tells our MC that she has absolutely zero interest in him and asks that he quit staring at her all the time. She did this before our MC even said a word to her. Back in the present, Oak tells our MC that he must confess his feelings to Yuko before she has a chance to reject him, and that they'll be there to console him once she does. Asahi goes running to find Yuko. Once he's out of earshot, Shima and Sakura state that Yuko is pretty, but is known for being unapproachable and therefore unobtainable, but Oak refutes them by revealing that just like Asahi is always staring at Yuko, Yuko is always staring at Asahi too. Now we are back where our story began, with our MC running to meet with Yuko in their classroom, and we finally learn the reason for their screaming. Asahi walked in right as Yuko decided to stretch out her wings, thinking nobody was around. Yuko quickly retracts her wings and fangs, asking our MC if he saw. He says no, but his face once again betrays him. We jump over to Asahi's friends, who are wondering how things went for our MC, noting he's been gone for a while. We are also introduced to a girl named Akemi Mikan, president of the newspaper club. Akemi's tendency to stick her nose in other people's business for a story to print has earned her the name the Evil Queen, which Akemi seems to take in stride. Back in the classroom, Yuko admits to Asahi that she is in fact a vampire. We also learn the reason for her quiet demeanor is to hide her Kansai dialect. For Americans, it would be like talking with a southern accent. Asahi asks why Yuko isn't turning to ash when in sunlight, and she tells him that sunlight just causes her to develop a serious tan. Our MC concludes that the mystery behind Yuko is finally solved. She asks our MC if he's scared of her now, to which Asahi replies that he actually finds it cute. Yuko reveals that a stipulation set by her father was that she had to leave school if anyone ever learned she was a vampire, but also tells our MC that she is glad that he was the last person she got to talk to before leaving, as she expected the person who would discover her secret would have been terrified. Yuko can tell by Asahi's expression that he's feeling guilty about all of this and assures him that nothing is his fault, telling him that she had fun. Asahi comes to the realization, having just witnessed Yuko looking so happy when he first arrived, revealing her Kansai dialect and all of the expressive faces she's made while talking to him, that she really likes talking to people but has to keep her distance in order to keep her secret. Before she can say goodbye, our MC tells her that he doesn't want her to leave and tells her that they can just keep this a secret between the two of them, and he'll keep everything a secret with every fiber of his being. In the heat of the moment, Asahi makes an attempt to confess to Yuko, but instead of confessing his love, Asahi asks Yuko to become his friend. This causes Yuko to think back on her time at school, and she realizes that despite what she said about having fun, she has always been alone. However, she also remembers watching Asahi interacting with his friends, and watching them having fun with each other made her smile. Before Asahi can correct himself, he looks up at Yuko to see that his offer of friendship has brought her to tears. She says that if Asahi is fine with her, she would like that too. This brings our MC great joy, knowing that he now must do everything in his power to protect the secret of his new friend. As night falls, Asahi and Yuko walk home together, both of whom are happy knowing that they live in the same neighborhood, all the while being followed from the shadows by the class representative, Aizawa Nagisa. The next morning, Aizawa criticizes the teacher for being 1 minute 34 seconds late to class. She overhears Asahi and his friends noting her strictness. Aizawa's cold, strict, machine-like personality is what earned her the nickname of the Iron Lady. Irked, Aizawa ponders why she hasn't been able to stop thinking about our MC. Remembering last summer when she turned down Asahi before he could ever actually say anything to her, but also encouraged him to find a new path for success in love. Aizawa's emotions begin radiating a dark aura, which MC can feel like death looming over him. Aizawa tries calming herself inside what could be described as her subconscious control room. We as the viewers could surmise this would be further proof of her machine-like personality. Aizawa tells herself that she doesn't care about Asahi, but wonders if he really was attracted to her back then, since she never actually allowed for him to speak. Wondering if she was wrong about our MC's intentions that day causes her to feel unease. So during lunch, Aizawa confronts Asahi. She struggles with asking him at first before blurting out if he really was in love with her then, to which Asahi simply says, yeah. Asahi's friends come across the scene and believe that Aizawa is confessing to him, embarrassed by the situation. She starts yelling out that men like Asahi make her sick and are fools for falling for someone else after being rejected. Crushed by Aizawa's words, Asahi thinks that all of this is her way of telling him that her hatred of him stems from the fact that he didn't try harder to win her love, and simply apologizes before being led away by his friends. After school, Asahi makes sure the coast is clear so Yuko can eat her lunch. Yuko can't eat lunch around others at school because it runs the risk of exposing her fangs. Asahi is surprised by Yuko's ordinary lunch and asks her why she doesn't drink blood. Yuko reveals that the drinking of blood in order to survive is a stereotype, and in true vampire moral edict, blood-sucking is a very intimate act that shows a commitment between two people. Yuko tells Asahi that vampire weddings end with the man and wife sealing their matrimony by sucking each other's blood instead of a kiss. Yuko's stomach still growls after finishing her lunch, but doesn't want to look gluttonous in front of Asahi. He steps back, bumping into his desk, and knocks out a package of chof pastries. Asahi states that he has no idea how they got in his desk, but Yuko bites into one anyway. It turns out the one she sampled has been filled with several spicy foods. Her taste buds are on fire, and Yuko flies around the room in a panic and asks our MC for water. As Asahi goes to get her some, he's met at the classroom door by Aizawa, who sees Yuko's wings and fangs. Yuko slumps to the ground while Asahi panics. Aizawa stands silently before we see a tiny Aizawa climbs onto Aizawa's head, demanding to know Yuko's planet of origin and galactic affiliation at gunpoint. Yuko, however, is too entranced by the antenna on Mini Nadi's head. After everyone calms down, Aizawa reveals that she is an alien. The Earth is her base of operations, and what first seemed like Aizawa's subconscious is actually the command center of her mech suite. Very Men in Black-like, Aizawa needs to keep her true identity secret from humans and must use her neuralizer to erase Asahi's memories of her. Asahi doesn't like the fact that her memory eraser is suspiciously shaped like a hammer.
Don't even worry about it.
While running after Asahi, Aizawa states that her cover being blown will lead to her being court-martialed and will be spanked in front of a public crowd as punishment. This does not deter Asahi, but being told that it'll also erase his memories of Yuko as well does give him pause. Aizawa tells Asahi that only memories pertaining to Yuko and her secrets will be erased. Seeing this as a better way of keeping Yuko safe, he agrees. Before the memory erasing process could be completed, Yuko pushes Asahi out of the way. When Asahi asks Yuko why, she tearfully exclaims that despite her telling him when he initially found out about her secret that it was no big deal, since she could have just left the school and gone elsewhere. She can't allow going as far as getting hurt in order to protect her. She's grateful but calls Asahi an idiot for thinking that. Seeing this, Aizawa admits defeat, saying that if Yuko can trust Asahi, then she can too. While arriving at school the next day, our MC comes across his friends being interrogated by Akemi, who's looking for information on Asahi, but turns her attention towards him once she sensed his presence. Akemi reveals that she was the one who placed those choke pastries on Asahi's desk, and inside one of them was a recording device. It only picked up a single sentence of dialogue between Yuko and our MC and revealed nothing incriminating. Still, Akemi believes that there's a story here. When our MC enters the classroom, he notices that Yuko is not present and fears Akemi got to her, so he panics. After asking his teacher, she replies, Yuko had a cold and didn't come to school today. She also entrusts him to deliver the handout for that day after school. Akemi chases Asahi through the school to get him to reveal what he said. At one point, Asahi is able to throw Akemi off of his trail thanks to Aizawa. While discussing his dilemma with Aizawa, Akemi finds him again. Aizawa says she'll keep Akemi away from Asahi so he can bring Yuko the handout safely. Our MC arrives at Yuko's home. Yuko invites MC in, realizing that Yuko is comfortable enough with Asahi to allow him into her room and casually keeping her wings and fangs out, making him happy. When Yuko heard Asahi was coming over, it made her happy as well, as he is the only one she could actually invite into her home. Asahi gets a call from Aizawa warning him that Akemi managed to get past her and is heading his way. Akemi is able to sneak by our MC by climbing into Yuko's window, but her plans are thwarted once she opens Yuko's closet and is buried by the mountain of junk she stuffed inside to make her room presentable before letting Asahi in. The following day, Akemi fabricates a story that depicts Yuko and Asahi in a relationship. Akemi plans on going through and printing the story in the next issue of the paper, panicking Asahi. Asahi tries chasing down Akemi in order to stop her and eventually finds her on the school roof. Akemi is there with copies of the photos she fabricated and threatens to throw them off the roof. Asahi worries that if the story were to spread, it would draw more attention to Yuko, who would then have to isolate herself again. Asahi's begging and desperation just want Akemi to release the photos even more so. Then Asahi remembers what his friend Oak told him. She likes to troll people knowing that it bothers them. Asahi then tells Akemi that he gives up and he'll let her print the story and release the photos. Even going as far as to say that reading the story in the paper would make him happy. Akemi then tries trolling Asahi by saying why would she, the evil queen, do something that would make him happy. The next day, Oka meets up with our MC. They talk about how Akemi goes through with publishing the story, but add a disclaimer noting that it's a work of fiction. Oka states that maybe Akemi isn't evil as she wants everyone to believe, but Asahi ponders why would she go through with such an act. At another location on the school grounds, we find Akemi arguing with her eyeglasses. We then learn the glasses are possessed by Fuku, who claims to be a god of fortune. Fuku states that Akemi only has to accept Fuku, and he can use his godly powers to make her childhood dreams a reality. and it is implied that her dreams were to be with Asahi. However, Akemi states that she's fine with the relationship because continuing the friendship the two have had since childhood means she'll always have him in her life. The next day in the classroom, Asahi's friend Shima is caught by their teacher looking at lewd magazines. Shima claims that it isn't his, but actually Asahi's. The teacher asks Aizawa to scold them, but notice that she is not in class. Moments later, Asahi feels something hitting him in the head. He looks down to see Aizawa is without her suit. In order to leave the classroom, Asahi has to embarrass himself by stating he has to make a number 2. In the hallway, we learn that Aizawa's suit ran out of power and that it's Asahi's fault. Seeing a flashback during the free period, Aizawa was leaving the classroom when she walks past Asahi and Yuko mid-conversation. Based on what she overhears, it sounds like Asahi made love to Yuko 5 times the night before, with Yuko stating she was nervous but felt great by the end, and that because of Asahi, Yuko's exhausted now. Aizawa gets so uncomfortable hearing them that she runs away covering her ears. Now back in the present, Asahi reveals that Yuko and he were talking about a DVD that he lent to Yuko. She stayed up all night, having watched it 5 times, and is exhausted today because of it. Aizawa leads Asahi to her suit, which is in the girls' bathroom. Avoiding the cliche of a boy getting caught in the girls' room, Asahi manages to get Aizawa's suit down the stairs. Outside of the infirmary, Yuko comes across the sight of Asahi holding Aizawa in his arms. Yuko, believing them to be having an intimate moment, praises him for his boldness. Gotta love her tomboyish nature. Being brought up to speed on the situation, Yuko helps get Aizawa's suit into the infirmary, lays her on a bed, and plugs her in to charge up. Plug up to get her charged? That sure sounded weird, since it would look suspicious and draw unwanted attention if Asahi and Yuko were to be spotted leaving the infirmary together. Aizawa offers to scout ahead to make sure the coast is clear. However, Akemi just so happens to come across Mini Nagi, who has to keep still to look like an action figure. Akemi begins to inspect the Aizawa figure closely, even going as far as to look up its skirt. Aizawa is mortified and is on the verge of breaking. To make matters worse, Shima comes walking by and is ecstatic when Akemi states that it looks like you can take the figure's clothes off. Asahi asks if he could see the figure, but since he only asked after hearing the figure's clothes could be removed, the girls back away feeling uneasy. Asahi then exclaims that he is the one who made the figure, so what he can do with it is irrelevant. Everything Asahi says in front of the 3 girls just makes him look more and more perverted, so Asahi just grabs Aizawa and makes a run for it. Asahi eventually hides in a storage room. He goes to pick up heavy sacks to block the door. And as he does, we are shown someone with horns who has been watching everything take place through anomalous means. The horned individual seems to also be able to use some form of magic or sorcery and uses it to cause Mini Nagi to grow to full size. Being this large, Aizawa's antenna is more noticeable and is embarrassed by Asahi staring at it. Akemi, Shima, and Yuko eventually realize Asahi is hiding in the storage room. While they try to force their way in, MC tells Aizawa that he's got an idea. Suddenly, MC comes crashing out and across the school ground. Full-size Aizawa then walks out, keeping her antenna out of view. When Yuko inquired how Aizawa got here, she states, while in the infirmary, she overheard the group's conversation about a figure that looked like her. She disciplined Asahi to confiscate and destroy it. Shima is distraught by this, and Aizawa runs off. The unknown horned individual found all of this to be mildly entertaining, as reverts Aizawa back to her mini self. The school day ends, and we see Asahi and Yuko walking home together. We also see Aizawa watching them at a distance. Aizawa is grateful for everything Asahi did to keep her secret safe, and also notes that while she's normally calm and composed, seeing Asahi with Yuko gives her a gloomy feeling. Aizawa curls up in her seat and her antenna glows, something that is only supposed to happen to her during courtship. On a rainy day, Asahi and Yuko meet each other while walking to school. Asahi remembers Yuko always arrives at school before the sun rises, but it's already risen by this time. Asahi worries for Yuko, knowing that sunlight gives him a serious tan. However, Yuko assures Asahi she'll be fine since it's supposed to be rainy all day. Asahi accepts Yuko's explanation since he figures if anyone would know what is or isn't fine for her. By the time Asahi and Yuko reach their school, the rain has stopped, the sun is shining bright, and Yuko has gotten a serious tan. Shortly thereafter, Aizawa has taken Yuko and Asahi elsewhere. Aizawa first explains that the sun's ultraviolet rays can still pass through clouds, and that should be common knowledge, especially to someone like a vampire. Yuko tells Aizawa that her skin will return to normal after a good night's sleep. Aizawa tells Yuko that sunlight is like a barrage of bullets and that she'll teach her how to dodge it. Aizawa tries to teach Yuko how to travel from shadow to shadow in order to avoid the sun's rays. Her analogy of sun rays to bullets falls short. However, while the enemy will eventually have to cease fire in order to reload, giving you the chance to strike, sun rays are an endless barrage. Aizawa then tells Yuko she's going to have to take a few hits. The training goes on into the evening with Yuko and Aizawa still in good spirits, even though by now, Yuko has a sunburn. The next morning as Asahi walks to school, he starts to feel bad that he can't find a way to help Yuko, relying on information he read in an illustrated encyclopedia of vampires, and the more he researched, the more weaknesses he learned vampires had. Asahi is then surprised to find Yuko having made it partway to school and having sustained no injuries despite the sun being out. Yuko continues to travel through the shadows avoiding the sun and eventually cuts through a market to use its roof for cover. Yuko suddenly stops when she approaches a garlic vendor. Asahi checks his vampire encyclopedia and it starts that if a vampire goes near garlic, then they'll go blind. Asahi jumps in front of the garlic vendor and quickly downs all of the pickled garlic samples. The vendor infers that Asahi must be doing this to build up stamina for his girlfriend, whom the vendor assumes is Yuko. This causes Asahi to spit take. For some reason, a hippie apparently traveled into the future and went to Japan to sell trinkets. The hippie insists to Yuko that a particular piece would look good on her, and that piece just so happens to be a cross. Asahi thinks that if a vampire were to go near a cross, they turn to dust. We as viewers do get to see that Yuko does appear to be uncomfortable with the cross near her. Asahi quickly runs over and hurls the cross away. A dog, however, brings the cross back and sits with it in its mouth in front of Yuko. Asahi thinks that Yuko is about to become dust, so he quickly jumps toward her, but totally loses all forward momentum as he watches her bend down to pet the dog. When Asahi questions Yuko asking aren't crosses lethal to her, she picks it up and says that they just make her a little anxious. A little farther into their walk, Asahi starts to give off a garlic odor. He apologizes and says that he'll keep his distance. Yuko tells Asahi that the smell isn't that bad. The smell of garlic just makes her eyes water a little, debunking another myth about vampires. Yuko gets pumped about finishing her journey when she suddenly stops in her tracks. The next obstacle in front of her is a bridge, which offers no shadows for protection. Yuko is bummed out, pondering why it is that garlic and crosses are no big deal for vampires, but sunlight is so effective. Yuko also says that if she could have overcome sunlight, that there was a place she really would have liked to go. Aizawa and Asahi start brainstorming ideas on how to overcome the situation. Considering the use of a spacesuit, a suit made from sheeting used to block out UV rays, and even a large suit like Aizawa's. Yuko tells them they don't need to worry, she'll just go back to traveling to school before the sun rises. Saddened, Asahi makes one attempt at finding a solution and throws out the suggestion of sunscreen, to which Aizawa retorts that if the answer to Yuko's problem was something so simple, then they wouldn't be in their current situation. Yuko gives off a look of nervousness, and her friends want her to clarify if she has in fact tried sunscreen, to which she unconvincingly says of course she has. We then skip ahead in the story, implied to be the same day, as we see Yuko out on the field in the sun. Yuko runs away when she sees Asahi and Aizawa, but they catch up to her. She confesses that she never did try sunscreen, to which the two replied they realized that a while ago. An unspecified amount of time passes and he sees Asahi waiting in an amusement park. Having been invited to go by Yuko, Asahi wonders if this is a date between Yuko and himself. Yuko arrives and immediately apologizes to Asahi since Aizawa had something come up and couldn't make it. Yuko's original plan was to use this as an attempt to get Aizawa and Asahi to hook up. They decide since they're here, they may as well enjoy the park, and after a couple of thrill rides, Yuko reveals a few things to Asahi. One being the amusement park is the place she wanted to go if she ever managed to overcome the sun, and that she herself is actually only half vampire since her mother is a human. Yuko chose to go to the same high school where her parents met, and that they had their first date at this very same amusement park. Asahi and Yuko head into the haunted house attraction, where Yuko is surprisingly frightened but becomes upset. When they come across a staffer dressed a la classic Dracula, Yuko scorns the Dracula actor, calling him rude for wanting to drink the blood of someone that they just met. As the evening draws near, Asahi thinks about how he's glad to have seen another side of Yuko today that he hadn't before. When Yuko asks him what it is he's thinking about, Asahi lies by saying he was wondering if there were also invisible men in Wolfman where Yuko comes from, as is shocked to learn that actually are. Yuko tells Asahi that she's childhood friends with a wolfman. We are then shown at some time prior, a discussion between the same wolfman and Yuko's father at the Shinigami residence. Yuko's father had called for the wolfman to keep tabs on Yuko because he thinks his daughter is incapable of keeping her secret and tells the wolfman to end her school life immediately if that seems to be the case. The wolfman agrees, as Asahi and Yuko head home from the amusement park. They encounter the wolfman, whose name is Shiru Shishido. When it looks as if Shiru is about to attack Asahi, Yuko distracts him by throwing a stick, to which he catches in his mouth like a dog. Getting back to what he originally came here to do, Shiru sees that Asahi and Yuko have just left the amusement park. When he asked if the two of them went together, Yuko tells him yes. Hearing this, Shiru looks as if he's about to burst with rage, before calming down and turning to walk away. Before leaving, he stops and calls out to Asahi, turns around and sorrowfully says that he hopes Yuko and him are happy together. Asahi and Yuko explain to Shiru that they came to the park only as friends and not as a couple. When Yuko asks why the thought of her and Asahi being a couple would cause him to leave, Shiru claims it's not a man's place to interfere with a couple and protecting her is his moral responsibility. Asahi realizes after everything that Shiru has said and done that he too has an unrequited love for Yuko. Shiru pulls Yuko aside and asks her if Asahi is just a normal human. When she tells him yes, he goes over and apologizes for his behavior. Just as everything seems to calm down, Shiru asks Asahi why he isn't freaked out over seeing his fangs and surmised that it's because Asahi has prior knowledge of creatures like him existing. Shiru reveals that he's here at the request of Yuko's father. He's tasked with bringing her back if anyone found out about her secret. Asahi panics and tries to act dumb to mislead Shiru, but Shiru tells Asahi that he's too easy to read. Shiru and Asahi look up into the sky and see the moon. Looking at the moon caused Shiru to transform, however. In a strange twist, it turns out that Shiru was the actual Wolfman transformation, and the true form is a girl named Shiho, a total pervert. The three of them head back to Yuko's place, where Asahi admits that he finds it hard to believe that Shiho really is a girl, having just been a guy earlier, so Shiho offers Asahi to use her body however he pleases. During the time that has elapsed since the three first encountered each other, we've also been getting small segments of Aizawa. Aizawa made the excuse that something urgent came up and couldn't go to the amusement park with Yuko and Asahi, so she could allow the two of them to get closer. Sometime later in the day, Aizawa decided to make a cake for Yuko as a way of apologizing for missing out. Aizawa knows the apology can wait until tomorrow, but she wants to deliver the cake today since she wants to know from Yuko how her time with Asahi went. Has this girl never heard of texting? Yet every time Aizawa imagines those two getting closer, Aizawa's own feelings for Asahi manifest in the form of outbursts. Back in Yuko's room, Shiho keeps getting more and more ecchi with Asahi, but the closer Shiho gets to Asahi on one side, the closer Yuko gets to him on the other. Yuko has enough of Shiho's antics and shows her a picture of the moon, triggering Shiho's transformation. Yuko knew it would happen, but feigns surprise. It's at this point in time that Aizawa arrives outside of Yuko's place. Shiru is furious and pounces on Asahi. Yuko slips Asahi the photo and he shows it to Shiru. Aizawa reaches the front door right at the point of transformation, which produces a bright flashlight. Aizawa thrusts the door open and sees a woman she didn't recognize from behind. Aizawa quickly apologizes, thinking she has the wrong address, and leaves, then see the name on the plaque outside clearly reads Yuko's surname Shirigami. Shio is aroused by her current position on top of Asahi. Aizawa walks back in and misinterprets the situation. As Aizawa runs out, Asahi reaches out and calls for her, but he ends up copping a feel on Shiho, to her delight. Yuko calls Asahi a pervert, but Asahi says it wasn't intentional. He flails his arm, forgetting that he's still holding the picture of the moon. Shio catches a glimpse of it and once again becomes Shiru. Outside of the dwelling, Aizawa collects herself, realizing that she spoke without thinking. She may have misunderstood the situation she just witnessed. Aizawa enters again to find the same situation as before, but now Shiru is the one on top of Masagi. This makes Aizawa even more uncomfortable than before and bolts away from the dwelling entirely, thinking that she just witnessed a yaoi moment. Asahi released the photo as Shiru shook him down, but the photo flutters down and catches Shiru's eye, once again returning to Shio. Shio has had enough foreplay and goes to eat up Asahi. However, Yuko stops her. When Shio asks why she shouldn't, Yuko claims it's because Asahi is unwilling and that he has Aizawa. Shio wants to have a private conversation with Yuko and puts Asahi to sleep using her bazooms. When Shio asks Yuko if those were the only reasons she wanted her to stop, Yuko says no, but is hesitant to go into more detail. Shio tells Yuko that she has always been thick-headed when it comes to other people's feelings as well as her own. Shio leaves, keeping a pair of Yuko's panties as a souvenir. The next day at school, Asahi and Yuko clear the air with Aizawa, who is relieved to hear that she misunderstood the situation. As the class is about to begin, the teacher announces that a new student has arrived. The new student turns out to be Shiho, who introduces herself as a pervert. With this, we end our video. Stay tuned for the next part and watch our other quality contents. Stay safe. Bye.